In the harsh reality of total war, victory wasn't just about how many planes were shot down or how much land was taken. It was also about how much stuff was destroyed after the fights, both on the ground and in the air. Europe in the 1940s was a place of destruction like never before, where cities turned into dust and ruins. And in the middle of the never-ending race for better technology in World War II, a new player showed up. The Focke-Wulf FW-190 F series. This plane wasn't made for dogfights in the sky, but for doing the toughest and most dangerous job. It was made to destroy targets on the ground. The FW-190 F was made to replace the Stuka, which was a dive bomber that was easy to hit. Its design had strong armor, heavy weapons, and could handle a lot of enemy fire when flying low. This plane was a real fighter, built to survive in the toughest situations. Even though it was often overshadowed by more famous fighter planes, the FW-190 F became one of the most effective tools the Luftwaffe had. When it showed up on the battlefield, it made people scared and respectful, especially those on the ground who were its targets. This is a story about how a pure fighter plane was turned into a tough but super effective workhorse for hitting targets on the ground. At the start of the war, the Luftwaffe had a clear advantage in the air, but things changed quickly. The Royal Air Force, the United States Army Air Forces, and the Soviet Air Forces rapidly brought in new fighters and bombers, each one raising the bar for how advanced planes could be. The British Typhoon and the American Thunderbolt and Mustang completely changed how air battles were fought. Their speed, how easily they could move, and their firepower were a real challenge for German pilots. And on the Eastern Front, the Soviet Il-2 Sturmovik became a real nightmare for German ground troops, attacking vehicle columns and positions from low altitudes. To counter these new threats, Germany created the FW-190 F, a fast, tough and powerful ground attack aircraft. It was specifically designed to fight against the growing armored power and firepower of the Allied and Soviet forces. The mission of the FW-190 F was simple, but super important for how the war was going. It hit enemy tanks, vehicle convoys and strongholds, clearing the way for troops moving forward. The FW-190 F was flown by skilled pilots from ground attack squadrons who turned this plane into a real nightmare for the enemy. It was a tank buster and convoy destroyer, built for the mud, chaos and constant danger of the front lines. On the Eastern Front, the FW-190 F's main targets were Soviet T-34 tanks, supply convoys, and artillery. These targets were key to stopping the powerful Red Army attacks, and every successful hit slowed down the enemy's advance. In the West, after the Allies landed in Normandy, the FW-190 F switched to fighting Allied armored vehicles and the endless supply lines that supported their push after D-Day. Its attacks on truck convoys and tanks slowed down troop movements and caused chaos behind enemy lines. The FW-190 F pilots had to be not only good at bombing but also skilled navigators, able to find their way in tough battle conditions. Plus they were always ready to fight enemy planes if they needed to. Their enemies in the sky were Soviet Yak-9S and Lay-5S, and in the West the famous Mustangs, Thunderbolts, and Spitfires, so no one could relax. The FW-190's transformation was driven by Kurt Tank, a brilliant engineer and test pilot. His impact on World War II aviation was huge. Tank's experience with ground combat made him focus on making planes tough and powerful. He knew a plane needed to be fast and agile, but also able to take a lot of damage. As the head of Focke-Wulf, he pushed for flexibility, turning the FW-190 from just a fighter into a plane that could do many jobs. This allowed the aircraft to perform different tasks on the battlefield. Even with competition and doubts, especially from the Messerschmitt folks, Tank's practical ideas won out. He wasn't afraid to go against the grain and try new things. He strengthened the plane's body, added armor, and created a machine that could take hits and dish them out. This made the FW-190 one of the most reliable aircraft of its time. Turning the FW-190 into a ground attack plane wasn't just a simple upgrade. It was a tough and long process that needed big changes to how the plane was built. Early versions had trouble with heavy bombs and bumpy airfields near the front lines. This showed they had weak spots that needed to be fixed. Engineers made the body, wings, and landing gear stronger to handle the extra weight and stress. Pilots coming back from battles wanted more armor for protection. The result was a careful balance, enough protection to survive, but not so much that it made the plane fly poorly. The FW-190 F1, which started being made in late 1942, had a stronger body and better armor. This made it tougher against damage in battle. The guns on the outer wings were often taken off to save weight. This shifted the focus from air combat to attacking targets on the ground, making the plane better at its new job. Constant feedback from the battlefield made the plane change quickly, leading to the final F8 version, which was much improved. The FW-190 F became the Luftwaffe's top butcher bird, made better by the tough lessons learned at the front. It became a symbol of German air power and how effective it was. Wartime aviation wasn't just about air battles. It was a real battlefield of secrets, where each side tried to outsmart the enemy not just in the sky, but behind the scenes too. Allied intelligence got a golden opportunity when a German pilot accidentally landed an FW-190 in Wales. British engineers and officers eagerly started studying the plane, carefully looking at its design to find weak spots and come up with good ways to fight back. The Germans weren't far behind. They carefully studied captured Soviet Il-2s to understand why these planes were so tough. By looking at the heavy armor and special design features, German engineers took the best ideas and put them into the FW-190 F. As a result of this arms race, new ideas really took off. Engineers put not just bombs but also rockets and special cannons on the FW-F series. These cannons could even take out the toughest enemy tanks. Pilot training also stepped up. Only the best were chosen for attack units, and training became a real survival school. Pilots learned the deadly art of low-altitude attacks, risking their lives on every flight. So, the FW-190 F's development wasn't just due to brilliant engineering, it was also because of constant spying, sharing knowledge, and quickly adapting to new dangers. Let's take a closer look at the technical specs of the FW-190 F8, one of the most well-known and respected planes of World War II. The FW-190 F8 had a powerful BMW 801 radial engine that put out an impressive 1,700 horsepower. This engine not only gave the plane excellent top speed, but also let it climb really fast. That was super important for staying alive in dogfights and for ground attack missions. The plane was built super tough, and could take a lot of punishment. It wasn't just fast. It could also handle a lot of battle damage, which made it a real favorite among Luftwaffe pilots. Even after rough landings or getting hit, the FW-190 often made it back to base, where it could be fixed up quickly. The FW-190 F8's weapons were pretty amazing for its time. It usually had two 13mm MG-131 machine guns mounted above the engine, plus two 20mm MG-151 20th cannons built into the wings. This mix allowed it to hit both air and ground targets effectively, making it a versatile tool on the battlefield. But the FW-190's abilities didn't stop there. The plane could carry a wide range of external weapons, from different types of bombs to rockets. This made it a true multi-purpose fighter bomber able to handle all sorts of jobs, from supporting ground troops to attacking heavily fortified enemy positions. The plane's center mount could hold a large 500-kilogram bomb, and extra bombs or rocket launchers could be placed under the wings. This really boosted the FW-190's firepower and gave pilots flexibility when planning their missions. If you compare the FW-190 F to its main opponent on the Eastern Front, the Soviet Il-2, the German plane was much faster and could turn better. It could dodge enemy fire more effectively, which often saved pilots' lives. However, the FW-190 had less armor than the Il-2, which was a real flying tank. The FW-190's armor protected the important parts of the plane, the cockpit, engine, and fuel tanks. But it wasn't as thick as the Il-2s, which made the German plane lighter and more agile, but also less protected from anti-aircraft fire. In air battles with the American P-47 Thunderbolt and the British Typhoon, the FW-190 often beat them in terms of maneuverability and firepower, especially at low altitudes. This gave German pilots an edge in close-up fights, where quick reactions and accurate shooting were key. However, by the end of the war, things had changed. The FW-190 was more and more up against the Allies' greater numbers and better technology. More modern fighters were appearing in the skies over Europe, and the number of Allied planes was just overwhelming. This greatly reduced the German pilots' chances of winning air battles. Still, the real strength of the FW-190 F8 was how versatile it was. It could deliver powerful hits on ground targets, fight in the air, and quickly change to fit any mission. This flexibility is what kept the plane useful right up until the end of the war. But even amazing engineering, a versatile design, and skilled pilots couldn't overcome the huge numerical advantage the Allies had in the skies over Europe. The FW-190 often had to fight against entire squadrons of enemy planes, and that was pretty much a lost cause. The Allies quickly realized how much of a threat the FW-190 F was. It was a powerful ground attack plane nicknamed Schlachter, which means butcher. Because it was so good on the battlefield, its enemies had to quickly find ways to fight against it. On the Eastern Front, Soviet troops fought back by setting up strong anti-aircraft defenses. Mobile anti-aircraft guns and smart placement of firing spots created deadly traps for low-flying German attack planes. Every time an FW-190 F flew, it risked getting caught in crossfire, and the sky over the front lines became very dangerous for German pilots. Also, Soviet fighter planes were always flying patrols. They would set up ambushes, waiting for the FW-190s to gain altitude after attacking ground targets. These tactics helped them catch and destroy German planes, making them less effective on the battlefield. On the Western Front, things were even tougher for the FW-190 F. The Allies had a huge advantage in the air. Mustangs, Thunderbolts, and Spitfires totally ruled the skies, not giving German attack planes any chance to do their job peacefully. Frequent fighter raids by the Allies and their own low-altitude attacks forced German ground attack units to constantly defend themselves. Often, FW-190F missions were cut short before they could even drop their bombs on targets. That's how intense the enemy's pressure was. The air war turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse. FW-190F pilots had to show extreme skill and bravery to survive as their chances kept getting worse. But when the FW-190F first showed up near Kursk in the summer of 1943, it immediately stood out from other planes. Fast, agile, with powerful weapons, it gave confidence even to the most experienced pilots. Many of them remembered feeling like true hunters in the sky, not just targets, for the first time. One German veteran said, "In a Stuka, you were a sitting duck. Every flight was like going to your execution. You knew enemy fire was waiting and your chances of coming back were slim, but with the FW we became real hunters." The FW-190F series never reached the same production numbers as its rivals. It couldn't boast the sheer quantity of other planes at the time, and it stayed in the shadow of more numerous machines. But despite that, its impact on the war was undeniable and felt on all fronts where it was used. The FW-190F gave a crucial, though in the end, not enough, counter to the enemy's huge numbers. It let the Germans hold back the push, even if just for a short time, giving them a chance to regroup. But despite all its good points, the brilliance of the FW-190F couldn't change Germany's fate. A lack of fuel, losing experienced pilots, and constant bombing of airfields slowly wore down the Luftwaffe's strength. The unstoppable increase in Allied production and their better technology crushed the Luftwaffe, taking away its former power and its ability to effectively use even its most advanced planes. By 1945, even the best machines were stuck on the ground because of a lack of fuel, or they were flown by pilots who weren't experienced, which made them easy targets for enemy attacks. But no matter what, the FW-190F made its mark in history as one of the most fearsome and respected ground attack planes of World War II. And in our next videos, we'll talk more about the legendary aircraft, tanks, ships, and monster weapons that were used in World War II. So, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get a notification about our new series. Please like this video, and tell us in the comments what legendary equipment you'd like to see us break down on our channel. And see you soon in our new videos, friends. Bye.